It's a city on the edge of destruction, where the poor eat garbage and gangsters rule.
Now you left your fingerprints on.
This country has more oil than Saudi Arabia, but under populist presidents, it's blown the lot.
It's broken. It's absolutely broken. Listen, it's so amazing what is going on in Venezuela and so unnecessary. You can't believe it.
Foreign camera crews have been banned from reporting on this disaster, so tonight we're going undercover as foreign tourists. Our secret journey starts on the resort island of Isla Margarita. It's too expensive for locals, but one of the few places foreigners still come.
Muchos turistas de ahora, no muchos, un poco de argentinos, argentinos, sí, poquito, argentino, colombiano, sí, y brasilero, pero el brasilero anda en
no venezolanos.
No, ahorita no es temporada de.
To beat the ban on journalists, producer Matt Davis and I have smuggled in small cameras and brought a surfboard for cover. For the next week, we'll be risking arrest as we try to film what the government wants to hide. It doesn't take long to see how absurd this once oil-rich economy has become. Now, the first thing you do when you come to a place like this, of course, is change money. But nobody goes to a bank for that, because today's official exchange rate is about 1/5 the black market rate. So I'm off to see a guy who's been recommended by a guy to change $400 US. He suggested I bring a big bag. I'm about to experience firsthand what Venezuelans go through every day. Their currency has collapsed even faster than the price of oil. So when you hand over 4 $100 notes, you get more than 1 million bolivars, which is what the local currency is called. And in socialist Venezuela, a bolivar really is worth not much more than the paper it's printed on. The next day, we fly to the capital, Caracas, one of the most troubled cities on Earth. This crowded metropolis of 5 million people once had all the trappings of a rich petrostate. Petrol is still cheap. You can fill your car for less than $1. What people can't afford is food or medicine. They have to queue for government handouts. Every day before dawn, residents start lining up for their weekly food rations.
Bueno, están desde las 3 de la mañana para comprar 2 paquetes de harina, que es lo único que hay en el negocio, no hay más nada.
¿Quién es culpable?
Bueno, el gobierno es culpable, porque el gobierno tiene los dólares del pueblo.
These queues have often turned into riots. Police and soldiers now guard food stores. Many supermarket shelves are empty.
Claro, ellos también en su gobierno comen y todo, mientras el
pueblo está creándose cola desde las 3 de la mañana por lo menos. Madres con niños como soy yo, desde las 3, 2 de la mañana para poder conseguir un pañal para un niño que no se consigue, un alimento para un niño.
¿Cómo es la vida en Venezuela ahora?
Muy difícil, bastante difícil.
La gente se viene un día antes y a ver qué compra, porque si no, no compra. Corriendo peligro. Con mi hija que tiene 4 meses apenas. Estoy aquí desde las 4 de la mañana.
¿Hay una solución para esto?
Claro que hay una solución. Bueno, que cambie todo el sistema. Que el sistema cambie porque no puede ser así.
It's hard to imagine this was once seen as a model of socialist success.
Damos la bienvenida al comandante presidente Hugo Chávez.
In 1998, Venezuelans elected a firebrand former army colonel to build a new, fairer society. Hugo Chavez lavished oil money on the poor and nationalized private companies.
La sociedad futura, en la sociedad capitalista, ¿qué es lo que reina? La desigualdad. La desigualdad más irracional, salvaje. Y por tanto la injusticia, y por tanto la violencia social, la explotación del hombre por el hombre, como decía Carlos Marx. El reino de Dios aquí en la tierra es el socialismo.
As his popularity grew, so did his power. When I was last here in 2009, the army, police, even the courts had come under his direct political control.
This was not a regime sustained on rational discourses. This was a regime that was standing on charisma, and a very strong, charismatic leader with a lot of money, you know?
But the money started running out. Chavez destroyed the market economy, leaving the country entirely dependent on oil, an industry the socialists proved incapable of managing. Margarita Lopez Maya has been chronicling her country's rise and fall.
Venezuela today has the biggest reserves of oil in the world. But the problem that has been that during the Chavez era, the company has deteriorated seriously, especially in the last years. And we are reducing our oil production.
And they've killed the golden goose.
They have killed the golden goose.
When Chavez died in 2013, he was replaced by a former bus driver named Nicolas Maduro. Soon after, world oil prices started falling and revenue more than halved. The crisis became a catastrophe.
All the improvement that the Chavismo did during the boom years very fastly deteriorated when the oil price fell.
We head out to what was once the heartland of the revolution, the slums that surround Caracas. It takes an hour to reach the district of Antimano, one of the city's biggest shanty towns with more than 200,000 people. The poorest live at the very top of the hills. Taxis don't even go there. Communal buses and motorbikes take people up and down the potholed roads. Leon Guerrero scratches a living ferrying neighbours to one of the highest areas, where he lives with his wife Andre and 3 children.
No, difícil porque, coño, uno medio come. 1 o 2 veces al día se casa. Porque, coño, no hay nada, se pone, a veces ella me ayuda, que sale a trabajar y vaina, y yo también trabajo y así, pues. Pero demasiado difícil. Todos los días la vaina está más difícil, más que a veces me siento asfixiado porque, coño. Porque ya ni la gente quiere agarrar ya mototaxi mucho por lo mismo, por la situación tan arrecha.
La gente en los barrios todavía apoya la revolución.
Ahorita, no.
¿No?
La mayoría no. No están de acuerdo con ese presidente ya la mayoría de gente. Ahí no quieren sacar, pero como el tipo hay que estar con él a juro, que ni siquiera ni deja que voten ni nada, porque él sabe que va a perder.
More than 80% of Caracas residents live in these shanty towns known as barrios. Chavez gave them a chance to dream. He built sports facilities, health clinics, new roofs and concrete steps, even public exercise equipment. People still speak fondly of him.
Bueno, te voy a decir que nos hace falta bastante. Chávez nos hace falta. Porque Chávez solucionaba todos los problemas que tenemos ahorita.
But even die-hard supporters like 72-year-old Josepina Lopez struggle to say anything good about President Maduro.
Bueno, te voy a decir, no es que él sea malo, de verdad que no. Pero los que trabajan con él, lo traicionan.
He has no charisma whatsoever. What he has is that Chavez says, if something happens to me, this is my successor. That's his legitimacy rests on that finger of Hugo Chavez. That said, if something happens to me, he is the one who has to succeed me because he is the one I trust in. He knows my legacy.
The late president's eyes are painted on public buildings as if watching over the revolution. Chavez has become the embodiment of Orwell's Big Brother. This man even tattooing the eyes onto his forehead.
Lucharemos, viviremos y lucharemos. Chávez vive, la patria sigue. Chávez vive, la patria sigue. Los ojos de la imagen de nuestro comandante supremo Hugo Rafael Chávez Frías, en los ojos que miran en el mundo, despertó el mundo.
And that is Venezuela's conundrum. People clinging to a dream as it becomes a nightmare. When I was last here, there was a real fervour in the barrios for what Chavez was doing and a hope that things would get better. Now, today it's much more muted, but the government still has strong support here where most of the population lives. They remember how bad the Conservatives were when they ruled Venezuela and how they neglected these slums. So as bad as things are, many still prefer the devil they know to the devil they don't. Leon Guerrero has no time for politics. He's too consumed with trying to make enough from his motorcycle to feed his family. His wife Andre and her best friend Kat try to bring some beauty to their lives, keeping pride and dignity as their country collapses. But they don't see opposition politicians offering any alternative.
Y es feo y se lanzan y otro ahí tan así, no se sabe con quién ya uno ni sabe a quién va a votar ya, por quién va a votar. Ahorita todo está... Sí. Esto está destruido prácticamente y ahorita ya no existe nada para poder votar por ello, pues. Por mi parte yo no votaba.
The view from their barrio is a daily reminder of the city's historic inequality.
Aquí la gente pobre, pues para allá el este ya la gente con más plata, pues. Gente millonaria para allá.
The east is where the middle class lives. It's also where you find most of the opposition parties, hunkered down behind tight security. The regime dismisses them as remnants of the old elite and is doing everything it can to crush them.
Maria, hello. Eric Campbell, how are you? Welcome to Venezuela.
Maria Corina Machado heads Vente, one of 20 opposition groups. She's fighting a barrage of criminal charges, including allegations she plotted to kill President Maduro.
Everybody that dares to criticize the destruction of the country after 15 years of the biggest oil boom in history, everybody who criticizes is considered an enemy and is treated as such.
Los ciudadanos están en el campo de juego. Son los ciudadanos los que deciden lo que va a pasar en Venezuela.
The irony is that government supporters have actually tried to murder her on camera.
A group of these paramilitary came and started to shoot us. We had to get into a vehicle, and one of my colleagues was hurt on her head. Fortunately, it wasn't. It was a minor hurt, but it was But she was shot, and she was just beside me.
Machado has paid a high price for being a face of opposition, albeit on the few media outlets not controlled by the regime. She had to send her 3 children to grow up in the US after receiving repeated death threats. The government won't give her an exit visa to see them.
They are the main reason for me to keep on moving ahead. I mean, I'm determined to see my kids as well as all Venezuelan children living in a nation full of opportunities with solidarity, innovation, prosperity, and freedom.
But many in the barrios see these middle-class politicians as entitled and out of touch.
¿Por qué? Más hablan del presidente de Maduro y del otro que está ahorita.
You can still see glimpses of the old wealth that once divided Caracas into haves and have-nots. But it's fading fast. The revolution really is creating a more equal society in which almost everyone is poor. The economy shrank more than 10% last year. Prices rose by 800%.
It just has gone worse. Now they say something that had never happened in the 20th century Venezuela, is that the extreme poverty is growing faster than poverty, which is something that never happened, that we know of it since we had official numbers had never happened.
In the city centre, you see people queuing for day work on construction sites or scavenging for food. And everyone lives in fear of violence. The economic collapse has caused an explosion in crime. Caracas has close to 4,000 murders a year. Right now, we're about to meet what most people would call a bad hombre. We've managed to make contact with one of the many criminal gangs terrorising Caracas, and a leader has agreed to meet us. Now, we've left his name and address with a lot of people, and we've organised to ring the boss of the barrio this evening to say we're okay. So hopefully he'll just talk to us and not kidnap us. We're led up some stairs, then taken at gunpoint to a holding cell where the gang keeps its victims. There are 6 young men and 2 women, all heavily armed. I begin by asking the leader what kind of work they do. Do you worry about the police?
No, no bueno contar.
They proudly show me some of their weapons from the US, Brazil and Austria. After taking out the bullets, he hands me his pistol. You know, I haven't held one of these before. It's my first time.
Now you left your fingerprints on, see, Jones.
Oh no! I'm in trouble, I better leave. Yeah. He tells me business is good.
Por mi parte yo vivo mejor que antes, pero la gente de la ciudad, yo veo que todo el mundo cada día vive peor. El año pasado fue una muestra de que el peor año de Venezuela. Todo no sé por qué, por la economía, qué sé yo, pero todo tan mal, que yo no, en mi caso no.
I want to ask about the morality of what they do, but with so many guns I don't dare. Instead, I ask if he planned to become a gangster when he was a kid.
Siempre me llamaron la atención las pistolas y nunca tuve la mentalidad de hacer daño a nadie, pero las calles y los problemas me hicieron cambiar la mentalidad. Y desde los 13 ya cambié la mentalidad.
Critics say the regime itself has turned to narco-trafficking to raise money. On our fifth day in Caracas, the US slapped sanctions on the vice president, Tareq el-Aissami, calling him a drug kingpin. State TV denounced the move as a CIA plot against the revolution.
Venezuela va a activar todos los mecanismos legales, diplomáticos, políticos, nacionales e internacionales y en los propios Estados Unidos para contrarrestar, para desmontar esta infamia.
Solo sé que soy Sinatra, cobijado en el town, conectado con todos mis chakras. El mismo es caricuao que a muy poco bien le cae. De la regla en mi franela con orgullo mi compadre. Oye la voz activa de una...
Everyone here is looking for escape. For some, it's retreating into an extremity of their own making.
Uno de miles que ha sido subestimado por quienes piden devolver un apoyo que no me han dado. Por eso escucho el consejo de mi mamá y mi abuela.
Caracas's annual Tattoo Expo is the biggest in Latin America and one of the most intense.
Piensan que Sinatra se va a rendir. A lo que Simba se cuestiona mis acciones cuando debe preocuparse de curar sus adicciones.
The big entertainment at the expo is a band called Public Disorder. They sing of the millions who have fled Venezuela.
Maybe the most violent city in Latin America might be Caracas. And due to this reality, a lot of people is leaving the country. A lot of young people is looking for new horizons in different countries, different places all around the world, even in Australia. And we sing about this reality.
Estrella en Italia, friendo empanada. Carlito en Alemania, Natalista en Brasil. Ana en Dominicana, recordando Choroni. El Cumanese en Arabia, la maracucha está en Rusia. Manuela en Australia, pero quisiera estar en Caracas. Algún día volverán.
Some choose to stay in Venezuela and fight for change. On our last day in Caracas, the opposition staged demonstrations across the city. It's a dangerous business. One opposition leader, Leopoldo Lopez, has been sentenced to 14 years in jail. Orieta Ledesma's father, Antonio, the former mayor of Caracas, has spent 2 years under house arrest.
Le quitaron las competencias que le correspondían a la alcaldía metropolitana. Crearon un gobierno por encima de él para justamente que él no pudiera ejercer su trabajo. Bueno, posteriormente lo arrestan y lo meten preso.
¡Y va a ser presidente! ¡Leopoldo inocente!
Yet still they march. But numbers have fallen drastically since last year, when hundreds of thousands would take to the streets. Opposition parties won control of parliament only to see President Maduro ignore its rulings. They fear he will ban opposition candidates from next year's presidential election.
Even though today over 80% of the population is desperate for a profound change, and I would say it's not only political, it's existential. They have realized that they no longer can have even uncompetitive elections.
Having chosen a populist saviour, Venezuelans are finding it impossible to shake his legacy. And some say it's a warning to the world.
When I look at Trump, this is populism. Right and left populism is very similar. And so what we have to see more carefully is how populism emerges when you don't pay attention to certain problems in the society. Poverty and social exclusion, a lot of inequalities. And when you have that in a society, and you find a charismatic leader, it's like putting the light on the candle. I mean, people are seduced by that because they want to punish those political elites that have not delivered the goods that they have offered. What we are seeing in the United States is very similar to what we saw in Venezuela at the end of the last century.
After 9 days, we managed to smuggle our footage through airport security and fly to the US. It's hard to see any peaceful solution for the 32 million people we left behind.